Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Let us start. So we announced the round table. Good afternoon. We start our round table as expert discussion. It was announced on the topic anti-corruption laws, how not to make a step back. Tomorrow, the Parliament of Ukraine faces a challenge whether they will really conduct an anti-corruption reform and pass a number of draft laws of the so-called anti-corruption package and will make a step forward, or vice versa. They won't pass anything and we will make not even one but several steps back. We plan to see representatives of the authorities here and the public organizations. Regrettably, as a result of objective reasons, the representatives of authorities could not be here. According to the procedure of the Parliament of Ukraine, the Profile Committee, the Committee on the Fight in Corruption and Organized Crime, have to consider all the amendments tabled by MPs, and as Viktor Chumak MP told us on the phone, they have an average of 150-200 amendments. Over 70 amendments, but the biggest number is of amendments is tabled to 5114 about the property rights and business interests. That's more than 200 amendments tabled. You see now what our MPs are worried about. So the committee will start its session only on 2 p.m., not at 10 a.m. as they planned. So all our speakers, Chumak, Petrenko, Danyliuk, have to be at the sitting of the committee, and we don't have any forecast as to when the sitting will finish. As far as public representatives are concerned, we have several of them who are members of organizations that's been fighting corruption for several years already, so we will talk to them and discuss with them whether they will adopt the law tomorrow and what are the challenges facing the public in order to implement those laws on a adequate level, because often we see that our laws are passed, but then they are not implemented. So here you are, Andriy Marusov, who is head of Transparency Ukraine, International Ukraine, Yuriy Lavreniuk, head of All-Ukrainian Special Collegium for Combating Corruption, and Klaus Hener, expert of the European Union.
Тиждень назад, таким під тиском громадськості.
So, a couple of weeks ago, under the pressure of public, the laws were passed, and in particular, Transparency International and other organizations staged a picket by the walls of the parliament. So Daria will tell us whether our MPs will pass the laws. Only if there will be enough people by the walls of the parliament tomorrow. We are preparing a surprise for tomorrow. This will be a surprise that will help to carry out educational work with our MPs, or probably that will help to publish on the shame wall, on the wall of shame, the surnames of those who will not come tomorrow for the voting, or will try today to level the significance of the laws with their amendments. I am surprised that most of the amendments about the transparency of ownership Well, our MPs are most of all afraid of this, even more than of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. That's why they don't want to vote for them. And the only motivation for them to vote in favor of those laws is elections. And also, to some extent, the demands and requests from international bodies and organizations, maybe the apprehension that we cannot get the third tranche of the IMF loan. They are mostly concerned with their election perspectives. We will highlight those surnames and inform our voters about this. Andriy. I do agree with Daria, because for the entire last week we were talking about this at different radio and television programs. We were through all the channels that we have access to, told that tomorrow is the decisive day, and the numbers do mean a lot, because if many people, public activists and journalists, come to the parliament tomorrow, this can influence the voting on the anti-corruption package. Of course, we also should mention that we were shocked, because a week ago our activists were stopped by some thugs when we tried to carry tomatoes there. They were not interested in cars, while you can take a grenade launcher in a car, but they were very much interested in tomatoes, because they were afraid that we will throw those tomatoes not just at the porters, but at MPs who will be proceeding to the parliament. So everything is still in our hands. If there are many people tomorrow by the walls of the parliaments, then the possibility of getting what we want will be high. Thank you. Yuriy, your opinion, please. I agree wholeheartedly with the colleagues that to press for the adoption of this law is necessary, but again, you know, tomorrow is a great day, a great Orthodox Christian festival, holiday of the Veil of the Holy Mother of God, and I hope that our MPs will understand that this is a great holiday, and in order to avoid tomatoes and other surprises, they will believe in their purification and in the fact that Ukraine does want to fight corruption, and they will vote in favor of the anti-corruption package. However, there's a question how they will vote and what for. As Viktor said, we have quite a lot of amendments, and the main law, 5885, has more than 200 amendments, so we still don't know what will be voted for, but we hope that by the end of the day we will know which amendments will be passed, adopted or not. According to the publication of our Prime Minister Yatsenyuk, he said that apart from anti-corruption packages that will be voted for tomorrow, there is a law on the purification of authorities, and he has ordered the head of the State Fiscal Service to create a special department to examine the declarations, income declarations of top officials. So the question is whether they want and why they want to vote for the law that provides for such examinations if there is a Prime Minister's order to create a special department that will look into this. So there's a lot of questions so far, but we want these laws be adopted as soon as possible, and then with our joint efforts and with those MPs who regrettably are now sitting on the profile committee, we will work so that these laws work comprehensively. About the risks of the adoption of these laws and how they will work, we will talk later. I'd like to ask Mr. Klaus, when in Germany they adopted similar laws, how the public and journalists and the society was acting in order to provide for the adoption of these laws? Or did the MPs understand the necessity and voted in favor of those laws without any pressure? Can you advise us on this?
Do not have such sophisticated anti-corruption legislation like Ukraine possibly will have in the future. But of course, with regards to illustration, I can comment a little bit because this was a rather painful and harmful procedure after the reunification in Germany. And of course, it was demanded by the East German society to lustrate all the staff of the former public service of the German Democratic Republic. Because at this point of time I became a judge in East Germany, coming from West Germany. I even cooperated then with judges who were then lustrated, and I could experience the special atmosphere cooperating with this kind, with these colleagues under lustration, and of course also experiencing then some of them disappeared because they were then dismissed because the illustration committee found then some evidence that they violated human rights in the past. Yeah, and of course this was also commented by the press, and of course the journalists and the media, especially the media, commented regularly on the outcome of the illustration, in the beginning, I must say. But I must also stress that the whole illustration took a period of time of between 2 and 3 years. Yeah, and of course then the interest of the public disappeared a little bit after some time. Yeah, and you could even see then that the decisions of the committees were somehow influenced by the disappearing interest of the society, because then the decisions of the illustration committee were not so harsh like they were in the beginning. So judges still keeping the positions after 2 years had better chances to survive than judges who were illustrated in the beginning.
Дякую. І тепер хотілося б коротко зупинитися на тих законах, які будуть завтра розглядатися.
Thank you. I'll dwell on the laws that will be considered tomorrow and what are the risks of their implementations. This is my question to our experts, because every law is very important, but if we have the Anti-Corruption Bureau, then there's a risk that it may transform itself from independent body to a body working to political order. So, Daria, I know that your center of counteraction to corruption took part in the development of this law. Do you think that Anti-Corruption Bureau can become a punitive body, or will it remain independent?
I would like to explain that we always have risks in our country. There's risk of avoiding independence or staying without independence will always be there, and we have all these guarantees for independence in the draft law. But first of all, we need the director of the bureau to be independent, and all people who work there should be independent. Now we are talking about amendments as to salaries. As I know, the most out of 200 amendments are about the decrease of the salary for those who will work in Anti-Corruption Bureau. But that's one of the key guarantees for independence. The director of the bureau, investigators in the bureau should have the salary which would be similar to the salaries of lawyers who work in the best private law firms, who can help in observing how the laws are implemented. They need to have a competitive salary. They will be investigating the cases about millions and billions. The investigator shouldn't think about where to find money, where to find some financing for an apartment. The director shouldn't be thinking about where to get money. And this is the key factor. And I believe that these people will have high salaries. It is important for the public also to observe how the competition is going on. According to the law, there should be the special competition commission. There will be 3 representatives appointed by the government, 3 by the president, and 3 by the Verkhovna Rada, and they have to select the candidates and delegate 3 candidates. There will be the interview with these people on TV. It will be broadcast live. As to the candidates, the journalists, the civil activists, they will be checking it all. And if someone is not very independent, or if there are any doubts that the person is independent, then such a person should be removed. It is also important not just for the head of this bureau to be independent, but these 300 people who work there, they should work. And we shouldn't have a question about where to get these people from, because some bodies which are working in this sector, some people will be dismissed there, but where to get new people? There are many questions about that. Because when you write the draft law was ready in 2009, basically. Now it has been amended a little bit, but there's no procedure in the draft law of how the people are to be hired to this body. It is one thing to design a car, but another thing is how to teach the driver and how to select the route for the car. That's one thing. Another thing is, and it's about independence, I can say that the people who can be appointed to head such a unit, the people who would be specialists, the people who would be independent, there are very few of them, and how to find honest people is not a simple task, because if we give a salary to such a person which would be higher than what the person in law enforcement body gets now, this way we will create another mechanism of getting kickbacks, and this body will be fighting with those who political system in the country dislikes. And the main thing is that the head is to be protected in his or her action. There could be only 3 grounds to dismiss a person: at his own desire, because of his health, and if there is a sentence against him made by the court. But there's no criteria about how the work of this unit will be assessed. That is just the mechanism which is being developed. We will think about how to control the work of this agency. And one more thing, besides besides the fact that we will not include many people who now work in law enforcement bodies, that is the subject for another discussion. We will lose many experts who really know and who really conduct a lot of work combating the corruption, preventing the corruption. But these are people who are not the leaders of the organizations. These are regular employees, but they will not be able to get to this bureau because there are certain criteria. Also, if this bureau becomes one of the subjects which combats corruption, but at the same time, if we do not reform other law enforcement bodies, the prosecutor's office, the security service of Ukraine, if we do not do that, then we will break the whole law enforcement system. It's like when the criminal code of procedures was passed. The code was passed, but the prosecutor's office was not changed, and now we have many problems because of that. And then third thing, we will set up, create this bureau. It will be independent. People there will be very good experts. They investigate some case, send it to the court, but without reforming our judiciary, we cannot expect to get some good results. Thank you. Quite a pessimistic forecast. But once we're talking about comprehensive reforms, I would like to learn in Germany. When we are talking about independence of law enforcement bodies, when we are talking about the level of salaries, these are quite an influential factors. In Slovenia, the average salary is 500, 700 euros, but people who work in similar body get 3,000, 4,000 euros. It's like 6, 7 times higher. What about Germany? How have you ensured the independence of law enforcement system so that these bodies and people working there, they really execute their functions, but not just execute some orders received by politicians?
To answer, at least it has nothing to do with the salary, I can openly say. In Germany, we have a saying, if you want to become a millionaire, never attend the public service. So, and the other way around, even in, if I compare it with other European Union countries, the salary of the public service in Germany is lower than in other European Union countries. So, but on the other hand, I was in Kosovo as an international judge, and at this point of time, the salary of the judges was almost quintupled to fight corruption, to make them, to strengthen the independence. So there must be at least, I would say, a salary which enables the employee, the public official, to have to have enough money to feed the family and to have at least some lifestyle according to his professional level and his reputation. And so, I have some understanding that there's also some increase in salary of public officials here, because I know that the salary here is quite low, let's say possibly even too low. Yeah. So, but I think this is not the whole package. If you want to know something about how independency is guaranteed in Germany, then I can say that there is a mutual understanding within the society that the independence of judges is not put in question. For example, if and of course, I also then, in case somebody would attack my independence as a judge, then I would defend myself. And for example, in case somebody comes to me and try to interfere in my independence, then of course I would take the phone and immediately call the prosecution service that they take care of it. Yeah, and of course I know then that the prosecution service takes care of it. So meaning the public service in general is possibly functioning quite well. Yeah, I wouldn't call it it's a bureaucratic public service. You can have contrary opinions in Germany as well, but I think it's functioning quite well, and that this is why, let's say, the reputation of the public service is still quite high.
Ну, можна я додам?
I'd like to pass the word on because it is very important when we talk about corruption and fighting corruption. Not only punitive functions, but prevention of corruption is very important. By looking into the style of life of public servants, how much money they spend, we may arrive at certain conclusions about corruption risks in their work, and the draft law 5113 is aimed at this, so that top officials publish their declarations online, so that every citizen can see how the officials live, how their life has changed, and there will be also declaration not only on income but on expenditures. I know that Transparency International was examining the declarations of officials over the recent years. Probably you can tell us how this can help fight corruption. Thank you, but I'd like to first comment on the Anti-Corruption Bureau. Frankly speaking, to compare Ukraine with Germany is absurd. Probably the closest as the level of corruption and public discord is Italy. If we look at what has happened in Italy in fighting corruption, maybe you remember that there was a campaign, Clean Hands, and I suspect that Mr. Yushchenko borrowed this name from Italians, and it was rather successful, although they had problems that were probably even bigger than ours, because there was a very close link between classic mafia, and we saw a lot of films about them, and officials. And by the way, what was happening there? Well, in 1980s, we all see how Berlusconi was first accused, then acquitted, but this is not the main thing. The main thing is that they started to move, and within their system of the branches of power, they found a group of judges who were more or less independent, although, of course, we cannot say that the court system of Italy was very independent, but still there was a group of judges who decided, bene, this is our last battle, we will do this, we will carry out all these investigations, we will protect witnesses, and they managed to do this. That's why the Anti-Corruption Bureau, why we, the public, are staking on, and probably this is our last stake on the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, because within the entire system of authority, this is going to be more or less independent. That's why we are talking about 700 Spartans. They really can become Spartans who will, in some sphere, in some group of officials or judges, they will start to put the things to order. And I think that even if they won't be able next year, or we won't see loud scandals about top officials, Poroshenko or someone else, some ministers, but if they start to purify at least the judges' corps, then it will be very good, because the judges are not going to purify themselves, to clean themselves. We saw how they in summer waited who will be our president, and then when they saw that the president is Poroshenko, they started to wait for orders from the president how to solve their court cases. So I call upon everybody. There's a lot of doubts whether it will work or not, but this is our responsibility of public activists and media, not only to follow how the Anti-Corruption Bureau is formed, but to raise the level of discussions. Guys, this is your last chance, 700 Spartans. You either become those Spartans or not. You have a chance. Don't look at the risks. Just come and volunteer. This is about the Anti-Corruption Bureau. As far as the Commission is concerned, well, on the one hand, it is important, the Commission on Prevention of Corruption. It is important because all the property declarations of judges and officials will be accessible at one click, 24 hours round the clock, and everybody will be able to see how honest this person is. They may tell us that they are thinking about the people, but in reality they have Maybachs, or their wives have them, and this will be a breakthrough, really, because until now, in order to find something, this is all the passive access, and you can get anything only if you apply in a letter form. And also, for the first time, we have such a notion as the examination or checkup of the style of life. So the Commission will look not only at logical mistakes where the figures don't match, but they will also have the authority to look at the style of life of a person and their family. And this or that official can tell us that their income is 100,000, but in reality spend 1 million. And this will be a foundation if the difference is revealed. This will be a basis for investigation from the Anti-Corruption Bureau, for instance. So this is how it goes. Okay, this is important because when you read declarations of officials now, then you have impression that they are homeless and they don't have cars and they live at the expense of their wives or relatives. This is very important. Yuriy, I know that your organization has started to develop a methodology of examination. You can tell us about this, please.
Talking about the style of life of senior civil servants, there are many different versions on how this checkup will be made. If the draft law on preventing corruption provides for creating such a body, but there are many mechanisms, and which mechanisms the Commission will select, we do not know. Maybe we need to, we started working on that ourselves, and we see many problems that will be related to that, and then there will be some legislative initiatives developed, like introducing 100% declaration for all the citizens of Ukraine who reached 21. That's like in the European countries. It's not just the entrepreneur who pays taxes and declares the income, not just the civil servant declares the income, but even the student who doesn't earn any money should declare the stipend, for example. Why do we need it? Because all that we started doing, we now see the problem that some of our civil servants drive a car of some Mr. X, lives in a house of some Mr. X, and he rents this apartment for some small amount of money. But who's this Mr. X? Now back to the law 4728 on the rights to the real estate. Who's this Mr. X? That is some oligarch who no one knows. But then if we look at the documents, such person works as the gardener, for example. But if you ask for the declaration, there's no declaration of that Mr. X. And so that is why we want to introduce 100% declaring incomes. everyone should declare, and then we'll be able to check. If a civil servant, for example, has mentioned some Zhiguli car in his declaration, but he drives some luxurious car, we will be able to check who owns this luxurious car. But I agree with all of you that first we need not to say what problems will you have when this commission starts operating, but first we need to set up such commission. We shouldn't forget about comprehensive reform of law enforcement system so that we do not kill it, like it was done when the Criminal Code of Procedures was passed. So we need basically to do it all, to avoid all possible mistakes. We are limited in time, so I will be stopping you. Mr. Kostusev never had Mercedes cars, but basically they were all registered to his driver. And then when Mr. Kostusev had some problems, his driver just took all these cars and left. So, okay, let's draw some conclusions. We'll continue our discussion on Thursday. And this discussion was prepared together with this Ukrainian Media Center and the Civic Center at the Cabinet of Ministers. We'll again have the round table on Thursday, and we hope that our keynote speakers will join us, and we'll ask them why and what they managed to do. But now I would like to ask all of us give a very short-term forecast. Will this package be passed tomorrow or not, and what is your message to this society? Let us start from our German guest. Do you believe that tomorrow the package will be passed or not? And what would you like to wish us all?
I have no crystal ball, and I do not know what will happen tomorrow, especially with regards to the amendments to the anti-corruption laws. But of course, I think that Ukraine needs needs these anti-corruption laws, and of course I cross my fingers that they will pass.
Дар'я.
Пан Юрій сказав, що
Yuriy mentioned that we have to be very careful when we think about reforming law enforcement bodies, not to destroy them, but can we destroy what has been destroyed? My impression is that the system of law enforcement bodies is in collapse. I agree that anti-corruption bureau and the law should be implemented parallel to the reform of criminal justice. Maybe on Thursday the law on prosecutor's office will be voted for. We hope that it will be passed together with the whole package, and this way the prosecutor's office will be observing all the actions of anti-corruption bureau, but will be changed. As to independence of judges, the task of the bureau is to collect evidence. If the investigators of the bureau collect good evidence which prove the guilt of some civil servant, they will fix that the person got a bribe or was receiving bribes systemically, or will fix some wire transfers of money to his account. Then I would like to see this judge which would pass some illegal decision, and such judges will be thinking about how to make a judgment, because the attention of the whole society will be attracted to them, and whether they vote for or not, it all depends on how we go to the parliament and demand that the members of parliament vote for all these laws.
Thank you, Daria. I'll just tell you that the voting will happen on Tuesday, and part of the factions said that they will vote for the entire package if there are no amendments to the law of prosecutor's office. And Lavreniuk has just said that they will first consider the law on prosecutor's office and then the rest. We will wait. Yuriy, I'd like to tell Daria that judges in our country do not only pass sentences, but they also take part in investigation, in issuing sanctions. There's a investigating judge in the criminal code, and there won't be a permit to confiscate something or examine bank accounts. Then anti-corruption bureau won't get those permits, but not all the processual actions can have to go through judges. But believe me, as a practitioner, that if a judge is on the side of corruption, then you will be fighting windmills. About tomorrow's voting, I personally want to call upon our MPs and our public. Tomorrow is the great Orthodox Christian holiday. I call upon you to avoid any radical actions, but MPs have fear of God and don't spoil this great holiday. Everyone has to perform the mission that they bear. The MPs have to vote, and the public has to applaud by the walls of the parliament. As I am called Andriy, not Cassandra, I cannot forecast. But as far as declarations are concerned, you know, there's an intrigue there, like failed husbands or couch potatoes. Look at them, and quite a lot of MPs and top officials, you know, they have not achieved anything in this life, because as a rule, it is their wives who have everything. And this is what the colleagues already said. So we want to sort of separate this group of men who actually put the blame on all the Ukrainian men. They have come to power, but they cannot do anything, and wives are ruling them. On the other hand, the publication of their declarations is a yardstick to know how these people running for MP's seat want to be honest and transparent. During the last elections to the Kyiv City Council, the Transparency International has looked whether at least someone has published on their own their declarations, because the Territorial Election Commission said, no, we cannot do this. So we addressed all the blocs and parties who were vying for the seats, and no one replied to us. And they said, we just scanned, Xeroxed those declarations. But listen, guys, you are responsible to Kievans, to our residents of the city. You don't have to be responsible to Territorial Election Committee. You have to report to us. And this did not concern just maverick parties, but also Udar and Batkivshina and the Young Democrats. But all of them said, oh no, oh no. And this testifies to the fact that our political class, even if they are young and healthy, you know, they don't have it in their heads that they have to report to the city residents, to Kievans. So you have to listen to them and then ask them, guys, and where are your declarations? Why we have to buy a cat in a sack? Of course, the law does not demand this from you, but we are all honest players. Please, open your cards before us, and then we will think whether we will or not vote for you. So here you are. Thank you, Andriy. Thank you, colleagues. And as we see, we all face huge challenges, enormous challenges. And this is not just about coming to the parliament tomorrow and pressure our MPs so that they vote and perform their duty, but the main challenge is going to be how this all will be implemented, and the responsibility for us all will be even greater. I see your hand, and I want to wish us all great success and good and great luck. The International Foundation, Charity Foundation, Restoration of the Nation. Microphone, could you? Microphone. I am a member of the International Charity Foundation, the rebirth of the spirituality of the nation. As I am a head of the Committee of the Public Council at the Ministry of Justice, I am interested, maybe Mr. Lavreniuk will tell me what's going to become of the acting Public Council when the Illustration Council is set up, and is there a mechanism to set up a new Public Council Advisory Board? Well, I won't answer this because I don't know how to answer this, but if you think a priori and logically, then the Public Advisory Board at the Ministry of Justice has to act separately from the Illustration Council that will be created because their tasks are different, and the Public Advisory Board at the central body of power is set up not with the aim of lustration, but to help in and advise in the work of the Ministry of Justice in this case. And the Illustration Commission has other tasks, but as far as formation or disbandment is concerned, go and ask the minister or the head of the council. And the public board has the term of existence 2 years, and next February it will expire, so it will, of course, exist until next February, or you adopt the decision of self-disbandment. At the briefing today, they said that a new council will be created. Listen, I think that you should address this question to Minister Petrenko. And so, dear colleagues, I wish us all great luck tomorrow. It's a great holiday and a decisive day. I want to thank the Public Center at the Cabinet of Ministers and the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. On Thursday, we will continue our discussion, I hope, with the speakers from authorities, and we will jointly sum up the results, or even if they do not adopt those laws and the representatives from authorities don't come, we will still gather here and sum up the results and think how we will work on the implementations of the laws or what we will do to those